Hello, everybody. Holly here with Reality Sandwich. I am joined by my friend Jill today, who has just got back from a pretty fantastic, I don't want to call it a vacation, kind of a vacation, sitting with Iboga in Jamaica. So we're going to chat a little about that today. But welcome, Jill. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh my gosh. So Holly, first of all, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Love chatting with you. I'm pretty much known as the MDMA for PTSD gal. I have done a whole lot of content and writing about that particular healing modality. And that was in 2020, 2021. And since then, I've continued to work with a variety of medicines to understand how the medicines work with trauma. And the reason we're chatting today is that my most recent exploration was with Iboga, and this is my first time talking about it with someone, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh, I love that. That's kind of part of the integration process though, right? Like retelling what happened kind of helps almost cement and expand it for you. So hopefully that will be a part of this today.
Absolutely. Being able, just putting it in words, because get ready, buckle up.
Like, I'm so excited. When you told me you were going, I was like, oh yeah, I got to talk to Jill about this. Well, first things first, why Iboga? You have been experiencing MDMA. What led you to want to try other plant medicines and especially, hop on a plane and fly to Jamaica and undertake this experience?
Well, believe it or not, this is not a unique experience for me. So after my therapy use of MDMA, and additional one or two journeys with my doctors using psilocybin, because I was no longer in that PTSD doom spiral. I didn't need to use MDMA in that instance. I have used psychedelic tourism to understand different plant medicines. And I was also very much aware that the MDMA work with my doctors, and by the way, I mess up all the time. I say doctors, I say therapists, I say guides. It's basically my therapist and guide, but to me, they're doctors. So I hope that verbiage doesn't confuse anybody, because I mix it up all the time, depending on, what we're talking about. But after my work with them, I was very much aware that the MDMA work had healed the capital T traumas. I mean, I was marinated in child abuse for like the first 19 years of my life. So there were a lot of lowercase T traumas to continue to heal and to work through. And the other side of it is that I was a teacher way back in the day. I started my career as an English teacher, and I really like understanding how the brain functions, how we learn, how we retain information, how trauma kind of gets stuck in the body and in the brain. And so what I found was psychedelic tourism allowed me to continue to explore how my brain works, how the trauma was in there, and how to heal the trauma. And so I have worked with, obviously, MDMA. I've worked with psilocybin. I have worked with bufo, which is the toad secretion. I've worked with that a number of times. Cambo, which some people would argue whether it's a psychedelic or not, but it certainly has a unique experience in the body and working with trauma. And as I just moved through the different medicines, I heard about Iboga. I heard about what it had done for addiction, and I thought there has to be a trauma component here, and I was right. And so, it really wasn't out of the ordinary for me to jump on a plane once I had vetted where I was going to experience this.
That's awesome. I love that. That's just a part of your must travel. Will travel for psychedelic experience and exploration.
Will travel to understand my brain even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so how did you select the place you decided to go? Did someone else, had been there before, or were you just doing deep research before you figured out the right spot?
I am a firm believer sometimes that the universe brings things to you. And I heard of Iboga Soul. That's the company. That's the retreat group. That's the group that I chose to work with on two separate occasions from two different people. And then I started to do a little bit of research. I saw they were running a retreat. We had an intake conversation. I liked what I heard in terms of the health and safety component. I liked what I heard in terms of the experience level. And so those are things that I kind of look for, because as a trauma person, safety is like super, super important. And so as I was talking to two people, two separate times who recommended Iboga Soul, and then the intake conversation where I got my questions answered, I felt really confident that this was a safe environment. Health people were going, health people, what kind of name is that? Health people, medical professionals were going to be. Well, welcome to, podcasting with Jill here. But I was very, very comfortable at the end of my research that I didn't feel like I needed to research other retreats, because I just kind of think sometimes I'm led on a certain path, and that's how it felt this time around.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
When did you, how much time did you have to prepare for this?
Very cool.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah.
I'm a big believer. Yeah, I'm a big believer in long integration. And so just to give you an idea, I had a very intensive Bufo Cambo retreat in February. And so this retreat was not until, May. And so that gives a couple of months, but also allows me, I'm at a time in my life right now where I can travel. I just lost my dog in December. So it was like, I can go travel and do some of these things. But I spent that time from the end of that one retreat, integrating that retreat and purposely thinking about what I wanted to work on with this particular substance. So I find preparation and taking the time super important to have a good experience.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming you said you were looking at how Iboga has so many benefits for those battling addiction, but what else did you find in your research about perhaps trauma or other PTSD symptoms and things like that? Is there a lot to learn about Iboga in that realm? I got to be honest, I think we're going to be really excited as there's more specific research. I didn't research heavily only because, and I should put this kind of out there, I'm experienced with psychedelics at this point. I know how to navigate the experience. I know when I feel safe, what I can do. I know to not ask for dosages that are, crazy. Like dosing is important, environment's important. So I can't say that I did a ton of research. What I was really curious about, though, was that MDMA puts memories kind of, and I'm speaking specifically child abuse memories in this instance, because that's my experience. MDMA kind of puts the memories like on a TV screen or a movie screen, and you can see those memories without your body reacting in fear. It's almost like they belong to someone else in terms of your emotional response, which allows you to reframe those memories. My very first Bufo experience, because I had heard you have to try Bufo. There's a lot of research with PTSD, see what it does for trauma. Bufo actually put me inside of a memory. It wasn't the separation that MDMA had. It was, the memory was when I was like 17. My father was yelling at me. This is the way I depict my father yelling at me, because like the memory is him just like freaking out. And 17-year-old me is there. And 17-year-old me is learning that I can't even he was yelling at me because I had done something good. Like I don't even remember what it was. I think it was like a scholarship or something. And so 17-year-old me was learning, oh my gosh, too big for my britches, can't be proud of myself, have to be under the radar to stay safe. But 53-year-old me in the memory is going, look at that insecure man yelling at a 17-year-old. So when I got out of that experience, I was talking to the Bufo facilitators and I explained that. I was like, that's fascinating in terms of trauma. And that one of those facilitators said, well, if you like how if Bufo deals with trauma, you have to try Iboga, because you'll also be in the memory, which for me didn't actually happen. It was a different kind of experience, but that's what led me to work with this kind of medicine. Do I think Iboga can put you in the memory? Yes, it can. Probably. I didn't actually experience the same kind of experience that I did on Bufo, but a very different kind of trauma healing that I'm sure we'll get into. Interesting. Okay. I like framing it like that, how the difference between MDMA and Bufo. I think it's super cool to explore how those different substances that have some similarities, but they present so differently. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this place that you went to and what the setting was like and what the schedule of events was to be. Like, how did this whole
Yeah.
place feel?
Well, oh my gosh. So we were in, I don't think they're going to use the same retreat center, but I thought it was lovely. It was a lovely, big, giant house. There were 4 participants, me and 3 other people. And you're in Jamaica. And for me, I live in Pennsylvania, and we had like gray rain the entire winter. So for me, just being in sunshine was lovely. Iboga is a long psychedelic. So I was there for 8 days, and it's only 2 journeys. And a lot of people be like, oh my gosh, only 2 journeys. But let me tell you, my journeys on average were minimum 24 hours. Minimum.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I heard someone once say, like, once you're in an Iboga journey, you're in it. You're not getting out. And so the journeys start at night. And my first thought was, I'm going to fall asleep. Like, I'm middle aged. I'm totally going to fall asleep, right? You don't. You wind up staying awake. You're obviously laying down like any other journey. You can have your eye mask if you want. Our lovely experience was outside because you're in Jamaica. It was lovely with beautiful music. According to the ceremony, they follow, I'm going to destroy, they do follow the actual African traditions for the tribe where the Iboga bush comes from. And I should get back to you the actual name of that. So it was very much, the whole process was like the tribal. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say it was very ceremonial. Okay, that this was not a bunch of like people just kind of, taking some stuff. That we very much followed traditions with the music and the process. And really, it was 24 to 36 hours, and then a day of rest, and then you get into another one. And I probably messed up that math. I was an English major, but I think you get the point. Long journeys.
Long journeys. So everybody's in there's 4 of you. So everybody is, consuming this at the same time. Is there 1, 2, 3 facilitators? Like, who's there administering the medicine?
We had 4 facilitators. We literally had a facilitator per person. And, they wound up using a little bit of the medicine in a lot of different ceremonies. Like I did this in Mexico, that the facilitator will actually take a very small dose of the medicine to kind of keep in line with the participants. That was the same way here. That's how they were able to stay up all night. Yeah. It was really just to help us, if we had to run to the bathroom or if you got sick, some people their stomach got a little upset. Which happens on a variety of medications. So that's not uncommon. So yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic ratio.
How is Iboga administered? What is the
Well, so Iboga is a root bark. Right. So to stay with the traditional ceremony, our very first experience was literally a teaspoon of this root bark on our tongues. And, medicine is medicine. Medicine does not taste good. And that's done on purpose to really just appreciate why you're there, to understand kind of the history of this medication. And then after that experience, we were then allowed to continually to consume the medicine in capsules. It was very kind of the facilitators to do that for us.
No, that's I like the authenticity of that, and that's important, I think.
I do think that is important. It is, I think you have to be, if you're using psychedelics therapeutically, it's a medicine, and sometimes medicine doesn't taste good. It is what it is.
Yeah, if psilocybin mushrooms tasted like gummy bears, we would all be having way too many every time we went to chew.
Right. You get it. Yep.
Okay, so are there physical sensations that come with Iboga? Like, is there a body high? Are there visuals? Like, how do you relate this to other types of psychedelic substances physically?
Yeah. I think I have to put a disclaimer.
Okay, fair.
And the disclaimer is I'm experienced with a lot of medication, with a lot of medicines, and I'm very experienced in using these medications or medicines therapeutically. I pay really strong attention to my intentions. I'm goal oriented. And so for me, while this particular substance was new, the experience was not new. So I do have to preface that my experience was very different. Every single person in the group was dealing with different things. And so I can really only speak to my experience just in terms of confidentiality. Is that cool?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as someone who's very experienced with medicines, and I apparently sometimes have an ironclad stomach, that shocks me. I did not have, I had like one or two questionable little burps, but I was fine. And then for me, I found myself to be very still. So the medication is very small, very slow going too. You take the medication, you then have kind of an intention setting conversation. And then just like with some other medicines, there's additional booster. I'll use the word boosters. So that's the way the medication goes. And to make sure where the facilitators were very much tracking where we were and how our systems were reacting, which is why I went there. I wanted to make sure I was with experts. My experience was my body was very still, so much so that sometimes I have a little bit of hip problem when I lay on my hip too much. So I had to flip over. You're awake, but time definitely goes faster. And the first 8 hours, the visuals are a really interesting, like dark cloud kind of visuals. For me, it seemed like the medicine was kind of introducing itself to my brain and they were kind of getting used to each other. And so I was kind of seeing some interesting things. 8-ish hours later, so we all got to go up to our individual rooms when daybreak came. We got to lay around. It was lovely, just got to lay around and the facilitators brought us food. That's where I felt like there was what's that thing you clean your deck with? I felt like the medicine was like a power sprayer to my brain. That I was seeing memories from like 10 years ago. I specifically remember seeing a computer screen from a place I worked like 20 years ago. And I just see these memories kind of just floating in front. And it was almost like shuffling cards. Like, okay, that memory is gone. That memory is gone. It was very clearly in the first journey that the medicine was just kind of getting rid of things I didn't need anymore. And as somebody who, like as a teacher, you learn by having students make connections of new content to old content. So it makes sense. Our brain has all these snapshots we're not using anymore. So that was there was a lot of that going on in the first journey. I found it fascinating, really fascinating. And
was that an emotional experience? Like almost like, were you like sad to let these things go kind of, or was it like, sweet, make room, get out of here, I don't need this?
The second, yeah, there was nothing. I would say somehow the medicine knew that what it was getting rid of was not important. Like I didn't lose any memories of like family or anything of that sort. It was totally just spring cleaning.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. The second journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that's where I dealt with much more of the trauma stuff. The first journey was clearly laying the groundwork to get some real work done for me.
So it's interesting to me how this is like laid out. So you kind of have 8 hours that's almost like the prep. Okay, you're in that space. Then you can kind of go and you're moving around and, getting some food, of course, nourishment, making sure you're doing the human stuff, taking care of the vessel.
Yep.
And then what's the next phase? Like, do you then take more capsules and kind of go back into your meditative state?
Well, so for me, I also have to preface too, and I have zero problem sharing this. I have been in the throes of perimenopause and menopause. So The past 6-ish months, I haven't gotten a lot of sleep. There's been doctor's appointments, all that kind of stuff. So for me, so that first 8 hours, we're down in this lovely, Jamaica at night. It's beautiful. We then go to our rooms. I was very much exhausted. My body was very still. Other people did get up and were social. I was like, no, like, I feel like my body just, it's almost like the medicine was like, no, your body needs stillness. Your body needs rest. Take this opportunity. So I think that was a little bit not normal, but again, it depends on, when you're coming into something. And so really, really, for most people, probably really light activity that day. Because remember, you technically haven't slept.
Right. Yeah.
You technically haven't slept. You get up to that second or that next night, you're kind of hopeful you will sleep. I'm luckily now on some menopause medication, some estrogen and progesterone. So I was able to sleep, but that isn't necessarily a common thing. Like sometimes it can be really tough sleeping that second night. That's part of it. Like that's part of the health form I signed off on. I knew that I could wind up being awake for like 36 hours. It's a natural part of the medicine. And then you have a free day. For us, there was a lot of conversation, a lot of talk. We had like a little excursion. And then the next day is another kind of full day relaxation because the ceremony again starts at night.
Okay. So did anything differ in the second ceremony, or is it just like, okay, we're going to rinse and repeat what we did? It was just the experience you had that was significant. Okay.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Same ceremonial intro. Everything stayed the same. Dosing, I'm not exactly sure dose. Again, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but the facilitators certainly had a good handle then on where everybody was in terms of what they needed. As a matter of fact, same music. Music played all night. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was really, especially since you knew what was coming. I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, especially after what sounds like a somewhat relaxing and enjoyable first experience. It's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get into it now.
Yes. And to be fair, that very first day after, if you're getting rid of caffeine, or like me, my body was exhausted, that day after, or that day when I guess the day after is the way to say it, if you're looking at the nighttime, that can be a physically uncomfortable day, depending on what you've brought, where your body is. So I don't want to discount that. I think I had like a pretty solid headache for like 3 or 4 hours, but it was probably a caffeine thing,
So was there like a dieta you were to follow before this retreat? Like, okay, what was that?
Yeah, Iboga is 100%. It's a stimulant. Obviously, it kept you awake. So I worked really hard to decrease caffeine. When I do this again, because I love exploring, I will absolutely stay away from caffeine for like the 2 weeks before. I like a little bit of tea.
Mm-hmm.
I will do that. And it can be, and therefore it is a stimulant. I did have to submit my EKG to this particular group. And and it also is tough on the liver. So if I had been going for alcohol addiction, I would have had to get my liver tested. But I wasn't going in for that. Yeah. So it's not a medicine without risk.
That's very cool, though, and comforting to hear that they require that level of medical, preparation or documentation. Right. I've never heard of that before, other than like, I've filled out some forms, but I could have said whatever I wanted. So
right.
I like that. That definitely would add a layer of comfort. Like, okay, this is not a joke. They're not messing around. Safety is paramount, and here are the rules. So everybody play along.
And the medical people were there for the first couple of hours of each journey. Like we all had to get our blood pressure checked.
Okay.
Yeah. So I felt very comfortable in terms of the medical portion of it.
Was there other dietary prep, like food wise or anything like that? Or
No, I mean, I've just learned I try to eat a little lighter in general when I'm going into different medicine, but no, there wasn't, other than caffeine or anything that would be a stimulant. I'm also not on any other prescription drugs other than my new estrogen and progesterone. So I would imagine that if you're on it, I would imagine prescription medication would be something to look at too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about night 2, or not night 2, but yeah, the second ceremony.
Oh my gosh. So one of the facilitators was talking about an experience where the journey was just a full black screen. And I panicked and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine anything worse than that. Because as I learned, staying still for me has always been a challenge. And as I learned in my second journey, it's because of me being vigilant. I have to explain this. I went into the second journey trying to understand why I still don't feel safe. I'm in a beautiful neighborhood. I'm single right now. Like, why do I not feel safe dating? Why do I not feel safe in my silly little college town? Like, this didn't make sense. And again, that reality versus how I'm feeling, when you can see the difference, that there's a difference there, but you just can't feel it. That's how a lot of times where I think medicine can really help. Psychedelic medicine can really help. So that was my major intention. What's going on? Why do I feel scared? And so when one of the facilitators was talking about the idea that that particular journey for that person was just all black for like 8 hours, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't sit still for 8 hours looking at blackness. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have that happen. Guess what? That's what happened. And it was the most lovely experience. To me, 8 hours went by in 45 minutes. And I wound up asking one of the facilitators, I'm like, what is going on? And the response I got back is, the answers are in the black. It's almost like you've gotten to a place where the medicine is about to really help you figure some stuff out. And I was like, okay, let me just go with it. The night ends. We get taken up to our rooms. And that day for me with the trauma healing was amazing. So you hear very often that integration is so important because that's where you do the reframes. You know, you see something with the medicine, you need to work on it, integration. What I learned was that, so my father, again, child abuse kind of stuff, my father was a bit of a stalker. And that's how domestic abusers kind of keep you off track. He would just show up randomly at different places. He would randomly be violent. You would he really worked to make sure that you could never really know what was coming. And when I left his custody at 19, I was on my own and I was very aware that he was actively looking for me. People would reach out like, your father's been here, blah, blah, blah. And that went on for about 2 years. And so I internalized that I'm a target. I actually internalized that my femininity is a target, but that also is because he liked to beat up me and my mother, and I never saw him beat up a man, right? I'm 54 now. I have held on to this subconscious belief that I am a target. I am seen as a target. I had no idea. So the medicine actually shows me this while I'm in that daytime period. And then I'm like, well, and you can talk to this medicine. Again, you can navigate it. And I'm like, well, I want to get rid of that because that's not true. That's just a story. And, my father's dead. Like, we shouldn't be holding on. And my brain, now, again, English major, I love imagery. My brain gave me the image of like a couple of laser beams, like little lasers hitting different parts of my brain saying, okay, we're just going to get rid of this for you. And coming out of that journey, and I said to the facilitators, I'm like, this works really differently than MDMA, because MDMA is like, okay, you see the issue and you have to reframe and you really have to use your neuroplasticity during integration and really kind of make it stick. I'm like, I feel completely different now. I'm not a target. One of the facilitators was like, Iboga can sometimes give you instegration.
That's a great word.
I cracked up. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's absolutely been more traditional kind of integration things as I've gotten home and this, that, the other thing. But the quickness, that blew me away.
That is what I have, when I read about people's personal stories, that seems to be a common theme. Of course, that's a lot of what you will see in media and stuff, but just just integration.
I can't take credit. That was their term.
Yeah, that is definitely what, especially with the addiction and things like that, people with these lifelong drug or alcohol abuse disorders walk out of one experience and they're like, oh, I don't do that anymore. I just don't do that anymore now. I'm done with that out of my life. Like, which is so powerful considering, especially in most cases, bodies and minds are likely still physically desiring those substances, but it just stops. Like, it doesn't matter, like the physical component you maybe have, or, you know, whatever that is, whatever that laser beam does, that's so wild how it's just, nope. We're not going to do this anymore.
We're turning that page. Yeah. And I can speak to the dopamine stuff because I had so many questions. Like, once I started to understand how this medicine was working, you know, I totally pestered the facilitators. And there's a whole conversation around folks addicted to opioids and how Iboga actually, you go through, you know, terrible withdrawal for the first 8 hours, but it actually gets the opioid need out of your system. I'm not a doctor. You need to go do the research and have someone far smarter than me explain it. So for me, I was like, well, I don't really have that issue. Thank goodness, knock on wood. But I was able to delete a stupid computer game that I absolutely loved, but wasted a ton of time. I've gotten back. I had not had one sip of caffeinated soda, which had been a little bit of an addiction. And social media is boring.
Nice.
Like, the dopamine, whatever it does to calm down the dopamine so that your addictions, like, I looked at this and I was like, guys, for food, I cannot wait to see what the research comes out in terms of like eating disorders and things like that, because what used to bring you a bit of joy, or at least, you know, keep you occupied or keep you trapped in an addiction. Like, I would just be so fascinated to see what it does for food addiction, because I'm coming from, you know, the female perspective and all that kind of stuff. So fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Well, one could argue too that even long held belief systems or thoughts in themselves are addictions, you know, thoughts that you can't quite erase. We become addicted to stories that we've told ourselves too. So while it might not have the same physical dependence component, it could be something that lingers in our systems and our lives.
I love that. I think that's a great way of saying that we get addicted to the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. What a crazy medicine. So you have that, like, how does like this type of a ceremony close? So now it's daytime now and you're running through this whole series of crazy laser beam. But what happens next? Is it just like, okay, I come back, you just slowly come back down to earth and everybody has a little recap and all right, let's go enjoy the sunshine?
Pretty much. I think because everybody's system is going to this is my theory. Everybody's system is going to process the medicine differently. So it's hard to say, okay, everybody come downstairs at 2 p.m. because it's hard to say that. So really what it was is, we will bring food to you until you're ready to join us for food. So very often people were kind of ready at the dinner time. And then there were a number of, because we only had 4 people, things were a little bit more casual in terms of integration conversation. So we wound up actually having there was nothing formal that was needed. Like, if you had like 10 people or 15 people, you'd have to be a little bit more formal. But because we were, you know, just 4 of us, it was kind of informal. And there is because my guess is that because this is such a long ceremony. There is no close to it. At the end, you have like the spiritual shower, water with flowers and things of that sort, and a couple of lovely sayings, and you give thanks. I've done that before. That was pretty much the end of the kind of the closing of, hey, we've done some medicine work here.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, can I go like tomorrow? I need to get my brain room. Wow.
You can. I believe I'm a retreat girl, but Iboga Soul's website, they do a good amount of medicine work. So, and Mark and Robin run it. You can give them a call and see what their schedule is and what works for you.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, compared to all of the plant medicines you've worked with, or I guess just out of all of the plant medicines you've worked with, what's been your favorite? What's had the largest impact on your life?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think to answer that question, you have to look at diagnosis, because when I started the MDMA journey, my system was completely dysregulated. I was in a doom spiral. I would not have, just to be super candid, I would not have done well. I would, how do I say this? Because I don't want it to come off wrong. My system was so dysregulated and I was so scared that there was no way I could have gone to a retreat with facilitators that I just met with one phone call and feel safe enough to really do some work. So in that diagnosis timeframe of PTSD, I needed the fluffy blanket of MDMA to move forward. I would say a different key for a different lock, meaning MDMA, if your nervous system is dysregulated. Even last October, I had some horrible flashbacks to when my partner passed away. And of all the medicine, I'm like, I need some MDMA to calm my system down. But when like you're just kind of clearing the cobwebs a little bit or something's bothering you, you can do a low dose psilocybin journey. I find them wonderful in terms of just getting some clarity, because again, you can maneuver that medicine. Bufo, I can navigate it to a certain extent, but the loveliness of Bufo is it's going to show you what you need to see and just surrender and go for it. I find Bufo to be very, very enjoyable. In a lot of ways, very spiritual for me. It just kind of like sends me over. But this medicine, in terms of like a tune-up, and it also, what was really interesting was that for me, like it even said to me, "See you soon. Can't wait to get together again." Like it was like having a friend to talk to, a friend that was like cleaning out your brain. But again, because I'm very experienced with medicine, I'm happy to navigate it. That was my experience. So, yeah, just really a different key for different lock. What you're trying to achieve, I think, is really the most responsible answer.
That's a great way to put it. I really like that. Yeah. Well, wow, this is so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing this story. And yeah, how can we direct people to learn a little bit more about you? I'll definitely drop your MDMA article here below. I'd love to share that. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the journey, Sage, so I can drop some notes below.
Well, I have to give you some props because working with you on that article was fantastic. So if there's other people out there with some experiences and you want to work with an awesome editor who's going to just take your hand and lead you, work with Holly. So I'll put that out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm the Journey Sage on YouTube. When I went through the therapy, it was hard to find resources. I mean, this was 2020. And so my YouTube channel is basically what this therapy is, how it works, how important prep and integration are. It's kind of the MDMA for PTSD 101. And so that's my YouTube content. That's usually where I send people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. It was great to hear your story today, Jill.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. This is the first time I've talked about this medicine, so good stuff.